huge factor for many women, especially who are dealing with weight loss stalling and not getting the results that they want to get and see on a keto and or carnivore diet, low carb diet, paleo diet, whatever it is that you are doing. And there's a few really interesting factors that relate back to iron. So we're going to talk all about that today on this episode and explain why there's a connection between iron levels and weight loss and fat loss. So if you are doing a keto or carnivorous diet or paleo diet or low carb diet with the goal of losing fat, of burning body fat and losing weight, you want to be able to burn fat really efficiently. Now, what a ketogenic diet does is it trains your body to be able to burn fat. It trains your body in this natural metabolic flexibility that we have. So when I first found out that we actually have the choice between being sugar burners and fat burners, I was so excited. I didn't know that we actually had a choice on which fuel our bodies could use. And the fact that we could actually make it choose fat, I was blown away. And this made me want to write my book, Keto Essentials. I wrote all about how you can switch your body from being a sugar burner to a fat burner using a ketogenic diet. Now, if your specific goal is fat loss / weight loss, which we know is fat loss because we don't want to just lose weight. We want to lose fat because weight has a lot more in it. It also has muscle tissue, it has protein, it has our bones. And it's why it's so important to not focus just on weight. It's the fat loss that we really, really want to focus in on. So if that is your goal, one thing that was uncovered in a study by Dr. Paul Mason is that there's a connection between iron levels and weight loss stalls. And the connection is that our body needs heme and iron, heme iron especially, in order to be able to oxidize fuel sources. So in order to make energy for our cells, for ATP, in order to burn, so quote unquote, burn different, molecules to make energy, fat, protein, glucose, in order to burn all of this, our body does this process called oxidation. And oxidation breaks down these molecules into other forms, smaller forms, and it releases energy as a part of doing that. And that's what oxidation is. It's this process that happens. And it's why we breathe. When we are breathing, we are supporting oxidation in the body by providing these oxygen molecules that this system is called the Krebs Cycle needs in order to break down all of the food that we eat and to break down food that we intake, the energy that we intake, the fat, the carb, the protein. In order to break it down, we need oxidation. That's why it's called beta oxidation or oxidative phosphorylation. And that's what happens. That's why we breathe, is to provide these oxygen molecules into the body. And I could get really deep into that and how it works. But on this video, I'm going to focus on how that process happens with regards to iron. So in order for our bodies to break down a lot of the energy that we take in, it uses enzymes. So cows and a lot of ruminant animals, they use a process of fermentation. We use enzymes to break our food down. Enzymes are little proteins and they make things run faster. They help us break things down. They help us with almost every process in the body that is a metabolic process that occurs in our bodies. And we need to have certain enzymes in our body, but we also need those enzymes to have certain components such as iron. So iron is a metal, and we need iron in order to be able to oxidize all of these different fuel substrates to make energy. And iron is actually also needed in a lot of other processes in the body. And it's a metal, so it can't be degraded when you cook it because it's part of the metal group. So when you're cooking food, you don't tend to lose the iron. That's why they'll say, like, you can cook spinach and you'll get better absorption even though it's cooked. You're not denaturing the iron because iron doesn't get denatured. It's a metal. It gets heated up and it doesn't get broken down like, say, enzymes might. So in this process, we actually need iron as a part of the process to break down energy and do oxidation. So what Dr. Paul Mason found, he was working with one of his patients in particular who was having a weight loss stall, and he tested her ferritin levels. Now, ferritin levels can be a false indicator because you can actually have a lot of iron in your body circulating, but you're not necessarily using it, because what Dr. Mason found is that if the body is in an inflammatory state, if it is inflamed, then the body will actually bind that iron up. So you can't use it. So you may actually have your iron levels tested and it says you have high ferritin, which is how we measure it, but you're not actually able to access or utilize any of that iron because it is all bound up from chronic inflammation. So if someone has an autoimmune condition, autoimmune reaction, they're going to be having chronic inflammation. If someone is eating foods all the time that the body reacts to it with inflammation, then the body's going to be experiencing chronic inflammation. So acute inflammation that happens momentarily is good for us. It's for wound healing. It's for so many processes. It helps us to, inflammation is a process where the body is sort of recruiting all of these different cells and processes to help us with like a cut or a bruise or some kind of injury. But we don't want it to be ongoing. Once it's healed that injury, we want inflammation to go down. But when inflammation is chronic, it can be chronically activated because of something called inflammatory cytokines. So the body thinks that the food that you're eating is actually like a foreign invader. And so it tags it as a foreign invader, as an antigen, and the body goes to work creating these inflammatory responses to respond to what they think is body thinks is a perceived threat. And so there are a lot of foods, when you hear about foods being inflammatory, that's why they're inflammatory. It's because they cause the body to have some kind of inflammatory response. But also, if you have leaky gut, which means you have gut permeability, then food that is being digested is leaking out of the intestine into your body, and your body is always going to tag that as a foreign substance, foreign antigen, because it's not where it should be. It's supposed to be stuck in the intestine. The intestinal wall needs to be strong enough to keep all of the food that you've eaten from seeping out. So when it seeps out, it can also trigger autoimmune reactions. So all of this is creating inflammation in the body, and that inflammation can also come from eating sugar, highly processed foods, a lot of processed toxic seed oils and seeds in our diet, and it can come from things like nuts. A lot of people think that nuts are mostly legumes, but are not just legumes, but that nuts, they don't realize that a lot of nuts are seeds. And seeds have a lot of lectins in them, they have a lot of phytates in them, and they can create inflammation in the body. And so if the body's in this inflamed state, it's going to bind up that iron that you are eating, and it's going to prevent you from properly burning energy for fuel. It's going to prevent you from properly burning your own fat for fuel and being properly fat adapted. Now, the other side of this is, are you getting enough heme iron and the right kinds of iron? So men tend to eat 50% more meat than women, red meat. Women tend to not eat a lot of red meat. And even men in general don't eat a lot of red meat because we're told that it's going to kill us. So both men and women will tend to have less heme iron than they should if they are cutting back on red meat, avoiding red meats. So red meat is the only form of iron that you get that is heme iron. And you can get iron from eggs and cheese, but it's non-heme iron. You can get it from spinach, but it's non-heme iron, and spinach also has oxalates in it. So if you get it from red meat, you're getting the most bioavailable, most bioabsorbable form of iron, which is heme iron. And that's going to help raise iron levels in the body. It's going to help us to be able to oxidize all of these fuel sources. So for burning our own fat, our body is going to be making energy, utilizing energy from stored fat. It's going to take triglycerides from our fat cells. It's going to break those apart, and we're going to have 3 triglycerides with 1 glycerol molecule. It's going to use that glycerol molecule, turn it into glucose, because we have an obligate need for a certain level of glucose in the body, and then it's going to take these fatty acids and utilize them. But we need to be able to participate in oxidation, and beta oxidation is the process of making energy from these fuel substrates, and we need iron in order to be able to do that. So the one side of it is your body inflamed from the foods you're eating, from autoimmune disruption? Do you have a high level of inflammation? You can have that tested at your doctor's office if you suspect that you might have inflammation or elevated levels of inflammation. But the other side of it is not getting enough sources of heme iron of red meat, because women especially tend to undereat red meat. We avoid red meat as a society because we are concerned it's going to give us, cancer and disease. But red meat is really that main source of heme iron, and it's one of the reasons people feel so good eating more red meat. People who are carnivorous or keto, incorporating more of a meat-based lifestyle, because they're getting more minerals, more nutrients, more iron. That is the heme iron that you can really use in order to be able to oxidize all of these substrates and make energy and burn fuel. So if you are having a weight loss stall, it may or may not be related to iron. You can have your ferritin levels tested. You can experiment with having more red meat in your diet, red meat, beef, and ruminant animals like lamb, and I think goat, I believe, and also just eating more of the dark meat. So if you are not a fan of red meat, I always eat, when I do poultry, dark poultry. So I eat the dark meat on turkey, and I do duck. And that's because that dark meat, what makes it darker is myoglobin. And myoglobin is what we need for that heme iron. So if you're getting the darker meats, you're going to get more myoglobin, and it's going to help with all of this. And so if you like to eat poultry, go for the dark meat. I love turkey, dark meat turkey, and duck is great. It also has a lot of great healthy fats in it, saturated fats, which our bodies also need. So try that out. Let me know if it worked for you, if incorporating more iron helped, and if you saw a difference. And I'll post a link to the study here, which showed that women had improvements in weight loss when supplementing with iron in their diet. So hope you guys enjoyed that video, and until the next one, have a fat-fueled rest of your day.